while also minoring in psychology. I was happy this summer to be interning at the St. Genevieve National Park as an intern and while also working in the education department. And you can go ahead and go to my poster, please.
Okay.
So just to give you a little behind the scenes of the national park in total, the national park was established last year. So it's not it's not a year yet. They were established of October 30th of 2020, and they'll be a year in a few more months. But I also was located in one of the oldest and the very oldest cities in Missouri, St. Genevieve. Just to give you a brief history, St. Genevieve was originally located on the bank along the banks of the Mississippi River in 1751. It was very known for its French colonial heritage, for mostly known for its farming until later on in around the 1700s when a disastrous flood came in and basically swooshed everything away to where they had to be moved a little bit more away from the Mississippi River. It is also known from its transition from French, then to Spain, then back to French until back when in 1804 when the Louisiana Purchase happened and everything became more of a U.S. government. With my job responsibilities, I did work as an interpreter and I also worked in the education department. My experience with interp was very new, especially since at first I didn't think it was more around my major since I am a mass communications major. But then I kind of got a little bit of a refresher. Communication, I'm talking to people 24/7, which was very exciting. At first I was a bit nervous since I'm not really good for speaking with people. It literally took me a few days to kind of get everything together until later on I was basically just doing it. I was doing tours, talking to people, and I was just being passionate about the stories that the national park had. Now, the national park is known for having two sites, the John Baptiste Valley House and the Amara House. To give you a brief history of both of them, the John Baptiste Valley House was built in 1794, and it was just a home for one of the last commandants in St. Genevieve, John Baptiste Valley and his family. And it was just a great transition to how everything was more French at that time before it became US. Only, I believe, 3 families lived there originally until later on the national park back in 2020 decided to get the site. And the Emmer House, which is my favorite house out of the entire site, the Emmer House is special to me because it does have a little bit of African American experience with the site. At first, it was owned by the Buffet family until later the Emerald family came in and basically took over the area until later on in the 1800s, I believe so. No, 1900s. The head of household was actually Pelagie Emerald, and she was a former slave. And it was really interesting and it caught my interest as well, especially since she also was a part of an interracial marriage where around that time it's basically not really common. And we're unsure if they ever got married or if they just, just decided to make it a common law just to live together and love each other. And Miss Pelagie is my favorite. So I just love Miss Emerald. She's my favorite person out of the whole story because she was a whole picture of what it's like to be a strong Black woman. She went through so much. Her whole goal was just to protect her family. She didn't care what she went through. At the end, she did later get freed around the 1800s, which was pretty amazing, along with her child, Felix Emerald, as well. And also, while being an interpreter, I was also working in the education department, making sure I was catching up on my research, adding more and more information to my ranger talks. And also I was working in the visitor center where I was responsible for basically greeting everybody, give them information about the National Park Service. And it was a lot. I did a lot of talking always. And at the end of the day, my mouth did end up becoming dry, which was okay. But I was really, really happy to be a part of that experience. Now with the project, me and another intern, I believe he's in here, Mykel, we were chosen by Miss DeAndrea Johnson, I believe that's her name, and we were working with the Underground Railroad project, and it was really exciting. The whole main goal of the Underground Railroad project was to see if we can find any information of how St. Genevieve and the Underground Railroad kind of relate towards each other. We did find a lot of information. Originally, there was a stampede that happened in 1852 where it had believe 8 Black men who all met together at the Valley Springs mine in St. Genevieve, where they tried to escape to Sparta, Illinois. And we thought that was some really interesting information as well, considering that around that time, Missouri was considered a slave state while Illinois was not. So we was trying to figure out how did they escape? What, because we're right next to the Mississippi River. So we was kind of confused, like, so did you guys swim across the river? Did you guys take a boat? We don't know, but we do know that later on their slave masters did end up trying to find them and basically took them back to where they were supposed to be. And not only that, we had the privilege of just basically talking to anybody, whether it was in Missouri, whether it was in Illinois. We went to courthouses, looked at all these old records that for some reason we don't understand why they just kind of laid them in the back. It was like, that you can mess up all of this wonderful evidence. Some of the books were dated from between the 1700s and 1800s. It was amazing. And I was like, I am just blessed to be able to even touch this. And we also met with a woman. Her name was Julie, and she was notorious for doing Underground Railroad research for, I think, around 12 years, 30 years. And we were able to set up a business lunch with her, where we basically talked about the information that we found and some of the information that she found. Um, although I feel as though we could have found a little bit more, but then I understood that we only had 10 weeks within our site. And I just kept it to the optimism where it's like, I'm only doing the best that I can, and I'm going to try to find as much information as possible. Miss Julie, especially, she was very appreciative of the information, some of the information she didn't know. And she was like, hopefully I'm part of research. That's all I was really more concerned about. Want to be a part of that research, where I was like, hey, I helped with finding this. Wow, okay, there I am. I'm part of history. Yay me. So that was basically what I've been doing as my project. The project process was really good. We did find some more information. It's funny how we found out at the end of our internship, and I was like, we were literally walking around town with our heads cut off, and we just found it out at the last minute. But we did find out that I believe there's like 3 slave houses in St. Genevieve. We were unable to find the names of them, but at the end of the day, we were very happy to even just have some type of information while just staring at the computer and just be like, where is our research? What's going on? But my final thoughts for the internship, I would say I would do this again 100%. Chris and the entire team, they have been nothing but amazing. And I'm really grateful to have met all of them, especially coming from out of my comfort zone, where one, I'm mostly in a Black oriented area, but St. Genevieve don't really have a lot of African Americans roaming around the cities. And it was a bit uncomfortable, and it was more out of my comfort zone, where it was like, especially in my head, I believe that I was automatically a target, where it's like people were going to look at us differently. The stereotypes that were put on us, already knew was going to happen to us and my other friend, my other partner, Mykel. But it was also a good experience as well, because it was also a life lesson where it's like, I'm going to have more experiences like this, to where I'm not going to feel comfortable. I'm not going to, be in my comfort zone or my little box for so long, that one day I'm going to have to get out that box and probably do things that I've never done before, which was this internship. And not only that, I was like miles away from home. And it's like, I couldn't just, go across the street, like, Mama, look what this person did. I had to basically step and put on my big girl pants and just live life to the fullest and just keep going, and just know that I'm only here for the experience. I'm not really here to kind of, it was I would say this, it was just amazing altogether. I had so much fun. I didn't want to leave Missouri. That's how fun it was.
It was that good.
Yeah, it was very good. I just wanted to, we always made a joke. I kept telling my group, I was like, you guys can just kidnap me and just keep me in the basement. I really want to stay here. I don't even want to go home. But but at the end, I'm really proud. I'm really, really glad that GOIF especially had given me this opportunity. And I do want to thank Chris, if he's on here. I don't know if he's on here. And I do want to thank the entire team at NPS with St. Genevieve, and also Miss Bradley, Andre, and everybody else. Just thank you so much for this opportunity. I had so much fun.
Amazing, Autumn. Thank you so much. I can really tell that you enjoyed your time there. Does
I
anyone
did.
have any questions for Autumn? I know I have a few, but I don't want to hog it because you know how I get.
Okay.
I just wanted to ask, in knowing that, this experience, first of all, I would say that's growth, knowing that, you're going to have more experiences where you're out of your comfort zone, and then you have to pull up some big girl panties. It's true. But honestly, I want to say, congratulations to you on that, and ask you, did your experience at a HBCU help you feel any type of fortification in moments like that? Did you feel that in going from, the culture shock from a situation where you are really inundated in people who look like you, act like you, talk like you, speak like you, and then another situation, did you feel any type of fortification, and were you able to draw upon some strength from that to help you?
I did actually. I drew a lot of strength, especially coming from an HBCU. Even though I knew again, like there wasn't a lot of Black culture in the city that I was living in, it was like not only that, I felt like, I don't want to say like it was my duty, but I felt as though it was important for me to kind of shed light to what it's like being a Black person, especially. Because the city that I was living in, they did not have a lot. I mean, they had a little bit, but it was more with the stories. But I had one of my coworkers. She told me, and she was honest with me. She was basically saying, "I'm still learning. I was mostly raised in a more Caucasian environment where it's like she doesn't know a lot. She didn't know a lot about HBCUs. She didn't know a lot about what it was like being a Black person. And me and my I call it my best friend because we're best friends at this point. Like me and my best friend, we was basically just teaching her some of the things coming from an HBCU, some of the things that she knew that we were going to go through that she wasn't, some things that were kind of different, basically culturally wise, or it's like she was most likely going to get this while we had to go through this. So definitely coming from HBCU, I would say, wow, it was like amazing. And it kind of makes me very happy that at first where it's like, okay, so I know that it's not just it's like a refresher for me where it's like I was able to get out of my own perspective and just see something totally different. And I was like, wow, so the world is really like this, and it's not just like in movies or in books. I
Right,
actually able to just be up close and actually experience that for myself,
right.
especially because I've seen so many like incidents where it's like let me see. I've seen so many incidents where it's like, wow, I just, all I heard is like, because of course we dealt with racism a little bit in the city, but it was like, we really, there's like a lot of places that really know about us and they just, dictate us just based off just reading or just seeing
On
what's on
what
the,
they've seen on TV, and it really, the perceptions that people have, and
yes.
which is why I'm always so adamant about, please know that people are getting, where are they getting their source information from, right? What are they being fed, and how can you really put a different perspective on it? Because
Mm-hmm.
one, we shouldn't generalize because everyone is different, and so everybody needs to learn that. That's just a thing. But two, know that you can be the influencer when you're
Mm-hmm.
in spaces that are different. So while that discomfort is hard to be in, take
Yeah.
that role seriously. Know that you're not the only one who's ever had to have that role, and we're looking at you as a young leader to showcase something different, to showcase something better, to showcase your best and brightest, so that
Mm-hmm.
people go away with a whole new mindset, right? Thank you, Autumn. I'm sorry, but we got to go to the next
I know, it's okay.
one. Amazing job. And so the next person that we have is Mykel. Mykel, your partner in crime, just told us a little bit about us. Why don't you take us away for the next set?
All righty. So if you go to my next slide for me, please. Not I'm blinking. All righty. So my name is Mykel King, and I am a mass communication major from Benedict College, and I was an interpretation and education intern at St. Genevieve National Park in St. Genevieve, Missouri. You go to my next one, please. All right, so St. Genevieve was originally located directly on the west side of the Mississippi River, but it was settled in about 1750, but then they were having some flooding issues constantly, so they decided to pick the town up, dismantle it, and move it 3 miles to the northwest to higher ground. It was a little bit further away from the river, so they wouldn't keep having these types of issues. Now, the park that I was working at was authorized in 2018, but it was established October 30th of 2020, which was last year. So while I was interning there, it was the newest park, a part of the National Park Service, the 422nd. So along with this park, we had about two properties that we were able to go in and actually give tours of, and that was the Jean-Baptiste Ballet House, who was the last commandant in St. Genevieve, actually in that area. They oversaw the rule from French to United States. And we also have the Amaral House, or the Beauvais Amaral House, as some of them call it. And that house was significant because it was the home of an formerly enslaved woman who basically did a lot of changes in the area. So to give you a little bit of background about the Jean-Baptiste Ballet House, that house was built in 1792 by Jean-Baptiste enslaved people for him. So basically, as a commandant, you're basically a mayor over the area. So he oversaw all of the governmental proceedings in that house. And it's also a vertical log, French colonial style house built on post on sill, which means that the vertical logs go this way and they are sitting on a stone platform. And then you have the Amaral House, which was built in 1792, and that one is a post-on-tier house. Now there are 5 post-on-tier, there are 5 post-on-tier houses in the United States, and 3 of them are located in St. Genevieve, and I had keys to one of them. So I just thought that was kind of cool. The Amaral House was occupied by a woman by the name of Miss Pelagie Amaro. She married Benjamin C. Amaro, who was a French nobleman from the French colonies in the islands. So they ended up falling in love, and the family story is, and we say the family story because we, as of now, cannot find any like records of them getting married, but the family story is they took a boat, went across the Mississippi River into Illinois, got married over there, came back over to Missouri, and they basically did communion together. Now, although those two were married, because Missouri was still a slave state, it wasn't legal for them to live together. So in that part, it's just very interesting to me. So although Pelagie and her children were living in the Amaral House, Benjamin was living up the street. I just thought that was just very interesting. So running back. So along with the Jean-Baptiste Ballet House, you have the garden that's outside. The garden that's outside, I don't have any pictures on here as of yet, but you have some of the flowers that they would have had back then, but it was also like a very grand garden. So they had the flowers, the rose gardens that Jean-Baptiste's wife, Marie, had flown in from, or shipped in from France. And then you had like the grapevine, and some of the original grapevines that he had are still on the bottom, which is actually, to me, very interesting to see. And then you have like, for instance, how Autumn was saying before, how we were working in a visitor center. That was just some interaction that we actually got to have and get to know some of the people that were in St. Genevieve before we actually went around to St. Genevieve. And I feel like that was a really great experience because I knew some of what I was walking into before I actually got to go out and experience it for myself. And a part of my internship was the project that we were placed on. So we were following the Underground Railroad, and the picture all the way to the right is of Autumn, I, and Emily. And so we basically went to Sparta, Illinois, because from all of our research, and that's pretty much where it was leading. So we were there and we were following the Underground Railroad and learning some stories about over there. See, the thing that's really, I would say, interesting, but it kind of rubbed me the wrong way is when you would look up Black issues or things of that nature, just Black history in general in the state of Missouri, nothing would show up. Almost nothing would show up. And like, to me, I came in with the notion or with the expectation that I was gonna come in and blow this whole entire project out, because that's kind of how I am. Yet when I would look up Southern Illinois, that's when everything about Missouri would show up. So, and you also have to think about it, like Missouri was a slave state and Illinois was a free state. Although Illinois was a free state, don't get me wrong, they still had slaves, but it's just easier to access the information over there. So we were going over there, we were learning about like different stories about different people that escaped and how they escaped. And we have, excuse me, my sinuses, as Miss Julie was saying, Autumn was saying, Miss Julie came down and we were like going through information and things of that nature to see how we could piece some things together. And so Autumn and I are actually going to be published in her book that she's coming out with. And then we also have like the different people that are around St. Genevieve. So critical race theory, that issue kind of did come up because our supervisor, Chris, he is a wonderful man. He is very inclusive, which a lot of parks apparently are not, but he was getting all of the representatives of like each of the different cultures or communities that were in St. Genevieve, like the Black people, although there were not many of us, the white French people, the German, and the Native Americans coming together to work on the foundation document. And someone had an issue with that and they took out a full page paper in the newspaper to talk about it. And so that kind of stunted our progress researching this Underground Railroad because people were like starting to get hesitant. So like me, I know I'm only here for like a limited amount of time. I don't have time for that. So it was an issue that I had where I was trying to like get some records from the church, because the church has like a lot of records. They kept records on just about everybody because although they didn't believe that Black people were humans, they made sure to get us baptized. So it was like a little small issue trying to get that together. So I had to pop up at Mass one day.
Frustrating. Sounds
It was
frustrating.
very frustrating. So I had to like pop up at Mass one day to like get the records from him. It was a whole thing.
Yeah. That is the reality that we face as a people, that our history is not recorded. That's why so much of it is word of mouth, so much of it is passed down. I mean, and it's why I think this digital age that we're in now, where we are documenting things differently. Like in some ways, I'm kind of like, social media is everything, but in other ways, it's telling me that we are now documenting our stories, where we lost so much history. Like listening to you tell me that you couldn't find it because it was a slave state, but you could go right next door and they had so much history on Missouri in Southern Illinois because that was a free state. You know what I mean? Like that's heartbreaking. Can you think of the years of history that is lost because we're just not written into it? So just, I want you to keep that in perspective as you think about your summer. And I don't want to cut you off, but I know we're like nearing time. I wanted to ask, did anyone else have a question for Mykel about his experience too?
I'm sorry, I get kind of passionate.
I know. I love it.
All right.
If anyone has any questions.
No? Well, I want to applaud you both. First of all, congratulations on getting published. That's going to be amazing. Please, can you send us Julie's last name so we can look for her and whatever she's going to produce on what Julie was Angelou, another kind of historian who was documenting the Underground Railroad experience for Missouri, and Mykel and Autumn were able to contribute to her efforts with their research. So please, if you get an opportunity, put her information in the chat so that we can keep a lookout for that. And congratulations on your summer and your experience. We're so proud of both of you. And again, I see the passion and the growth that you had just from this experience. And I really hope that you take that to the next level in your very next experience, even when you go back to school this fall. Take those nuggets and lessons learned with you so that you can continue to be so outspoken. You continue to be passionate, take every moment and live it till its fullest, because you never know what impact a moment is going to have on you, on someone else, on your community, your environment. It's just amazing. Awesome. Yes. Let's see. So we've got next up. Let's see. There goes my timer. I'm trying to keep us good. Micheala, are you ready, girl?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Go right ahead.
Okay. Hi everyone. My name is Micheala Hart. I'm a music education major at South Carolina State University. I'm a senior. So I had the opportunity to be an education intern at the Brown versus Board of Education National Historic Site in Topeka, Kansas. So basically, my job there was basically to help out in the bookstore, basically just handle transactions and things of that nature like you do in a regular store. However, being that it was virtual, they tried to figure out a way where I could help out on the social media side so that they could have an Instagram, a Facebook, a Twitter page just to basically get word out to the public about new products, new updates with the site and things of that nature. Um, so I wasn't able to go on my site until July 11th. So for the most part, I was just trying to help look for new books, new products that they could put into the bookstore just to acquire some new merchandise. So I was able to go to the site July 11th, like I said, and I stayed there for a week. So basically, while I was there, I was able to assist with just the daily bookstore operations, see how things worked, go around the site, learn some new history, kind of just restock, rearrange, and just help out as much as I could. And then I was given the task to start two social media accounts for the bookstore, one on Facebook and one on Instagram. We're currently working on it right now, but the accounts are in full effect. They're operating now. So just a little bit of history about my site. So Brown versus Board of Education, and this is something that I did not know. It basically started off as 5 different court cases. A lot of times people just know about the one landmark decision from the Supreme Court, but it started off as 5. There was a case in Topeka, Kansas, one in South Carolina where I live now, in Delaware, Virginia, as well as the District of Columbia. Even though the details kind of differed, being that there were different states, somewhere in the north, somewhere in the south, basically the common denominator was there's a violation of the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, which is saying that, you know, all citizens should not be denied any basic rights. So basically, at the time of the ruling, over a third of US states were segregated, their schools were segregated, I'm sorry, by law. It was a requirement for their public schools to be racially segregated. So the court case in Kansas started when Oliver Brown, his daughter, was denied, you know, the right to go to the all-white school, which was closer. A lot of students had to walk 10 miles, 5 miles, 20 miles, as far as they had to, just to get to the school that they were allowed to go to by law. They weren't allowed to go to the better schools, the white schools. It was just law. So he claimed that the schools for Black children, they were not equal. The separate but equal doctrine that was brought about by Plessy versus Ferguson, it wasn't holding up. They were separate, but they were not equal. So the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, which holds that no state can deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the law. The case ended up going before the U.S. District Court in Kansas, and that ended up agreeing that public school segregation, it really had a terrible effect on Black children, and it kind of contributed to a sense of inferiority. However, it still upheld the separate but equal doctrine because they ended up finding that some of the institutions were equal in their eyes, as far as the upkeep of the buildings, the curriculum, the test materials, and things of that nature. So those 5 cases didn't have much effect in their individual states, but when they combined, they ended up going under the name of Brown versus Board of Education, which we all know today. The Topeka, Kansas original court case was Brown versus the Board of Education, but only in Topeka, not the Board of Education in the entire country. But it ended up being shortened to that because it was a nationwide fight. Okay, so the 14th Amendment, which provided all persons or citizens equal protection under the law, was the basis of the court decision. So and it started December 9th, 1952. So on May 17, 1954, it was declared that in the field of public education, the doctrine of separate but equal has no place. There ended up being a sequel to this case because there was such backlash. In 1955, they added on that it needed to be, that schools needed to desegregate with all deliberate speed, so that immediately the segregation would go away. So separate educational facilities are inherently unequal was a part of that court decision as well. So to the site itself, Monroe Elementary School was one of the main elementary schools that was a part of this entire civil rights battle. And so even though they closed in 1975, in 1992, the National Park Service ended up buying it. And then in 2004, they turned into a National Historic Site, just to give appreciation and make people aware of this monument, to show the impact that Topeka, Kansas had into the ruling, which again turned out to be something that affected this entire nation and allows me to go to school with people other than my color, even though I go to an HBCU. But I have the option to go to school with whoever I want based on my intellectual abilities. So the impact of this site is basically that the public gets to dive into this monumental lawsuit that, arguably started the civil rights movement. Like I would say that it kind of jump started everything, even though it did. It was mainly a 60s, that kind of decade took over that, but without this landmark case, it would have been a totally different movement. So once again, the project that I was given was to create the accounts, and I can definitely put those in the chat. So, yep, that was basically what I was able to do in my short time. Again, I wasn't able to do too much, being that it was a virtual experience, and my particular project, my particular position was more so a hands-on, had to be in the store to do the daily operations.
How did you feel when you got there in July? You said the 11th you got there. I know it was short, but how different was it when you were able to be there?
It was a lot different. Not saying that I just did absolutely nothing, but it was a lot different just seeing the day-to-day operations, how they did tours, how they knew so much about this site that I just had the most basic on the surface information about. Being in a different state, I don't often get to travel. Just to see that different environment, even if I was just at the site most of the day, the exposure to just a bunch of different people, and seeing them kind of walk in with like basic information, and then they would come out just like, so, wow, I had no idea. And they, especially those who are Caucasian or of other different cultures, and they just had such basic information about what it is to be an African American and the struggle that we truly had to go through, and they come out with an entirely new perspective.
That's so awesome. That's awesome. Angelou, did you have a question too?
I did, and thank you so much for your presentation, Micheala. I actually visited Monroe Elementary School, or the National Historic Site, a couple of years ago, and this has always been very, very fascinating to me, especially as an alum of an HBCU. My question to you, so I know Plessy versus Ferguson, and I'm also an attorney, so I want to just put that out there first, but Plessy versus Ferguson was all about separate but equal, right?
Yeah.
So, and the thing is, prior to Brown v. Board of Education, although we know that the facilities and things were not equal, but the education and the care and the nurturing that the students received, because their teachers were all Black and looked like them, and it was a very nurturing environment, kind of like the HBCUs that we have today. Right. So arguably, like, I get that Brown made it so that we can attend whatever school we want to attend. And I understand the relevance of that and why it was so important. But as a student of an HBCU, what do you think that integration did for the education of Black people in this country? I know that's a big question.
Which is, that's actually an interesting point. We had a visitor who came in, and I think she was related to one of the students or just had some kind of connection. And she was basically saying that that student was basically telling her, you know, she could just remember all the care that she received from her teachers. Personally, like, looking at it that way, which is actually why I went to an HBCU. I went to schools with mostly Caucasian populations. And I did get really great education, but sometimes that personal element was lacking just because I wasn't being taught by people who looked like me up until maybe one or two teachers in high school. So on one side, I do believe that integration didn't help as much as it should have, but I do understand the fact that it's just like, you know, our students have to end up walking 20 miles just to get to school because they're not allowed. I think it was the exclusivity that made it just like, well, we can't go. We at least want to be able to choose, you know what, I'd like to go to the closer school, so it's not a hassle on my child to get there. Right. But I do believe, you know, if it was completely equal, it wouldn't have been much of an issue. But it was, so yeah.
That's so good, Micheala. Thank you. And I'm so glad that you were able to experience it in person as well. And, you know, we're diligently, fingers crossed, and hoping that we continue to have more in-person experiences, and we'll be able to put some of the restrictions behind us that happened to COVID. But this was a great presentation. Thank you for your time. We're going to move on to our next presenter. And I think that is Ariel. Is it Ariel or Ariel?
It's Ariel, but Ariel. It doesn't matter yet.
I want to make sure I got it right. Ariel, if you're ready to go, it matters, girl.
Okay.
Coming from Angelou and Lauren, not Angelou and Lorraine.
Right.
It matters, girl. So go ahead when you're ready, okay?
Okay. So good morning, everyone. My name is Ariel Roy. I am a graduate of Xavier University of Louisiana. And this fall, I will be pursuing my master's degree at the University of New Orleans. Also in the field of history, I'll be concentrating in public history. So you could go to the next slide, please. So this summer, I was an intern at the National Center for Preservation, Technology, and Training in Natchitoches, Louisiana. And I was a research associate. And Natchitoches is a little background on Natchitoches. Natchitoches is one of the oldest historic colonial towns, cities now in Louisiana. It was named after the Natchitoches Indians, and it is very deeply embedded into Creole culture, which I have learned got a very good eye-opening experience of. And this summer, I was working with the slave cabin and tenant farming documentation team at NCPTT. Now, NCPTT is basically a preservation site. They primarily focus on conservation, archaeology, materials conservation, architecture, and so this was different. So for my supervisor, Jason Church, he started this proposal with slave cabin and tenant farming documentation as a grant proposal. So last year, 2020, he began the process of going around the South and the Eastern United States, finding slave cabins, documenting them, basically laser scanning them, doing 3D photography, as well as interviewing people who grew up in slave cabins as sharecroppers and tenant farmers. And for me, this was ignorant on my part because I had no idea that these sharecroppers and tenant farmers were still around. So to be able to interview them and learn about their experience growing up in the era of sharecropping and tenant farming was a whole new experience for me. So immediately when I got there, I was able to stay in Natchitoches for the past three months. When I got there, Jason, he already had itinerary for me. So getting there, he said, we're going to go to sites and we're going to interview people. So my very first interview I did was with the help of the Ernest Gaines Center in partnership with the University of Lafayette. Now, Ernest Gaines is a wonderful author. He wrote A Lesson Before Dying, the autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman, and we were able to go to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, to interview a man who was a childhood friend of Mr. Ernest Gaines. And they grew up at River Lake Plantation, which was a plantation a little outside of Baton Rouge, and they grew up in the slave quarters of what also known as Sherry quarters. And interviewing him, we learned about his time growing up, being friends with Ernest Gaines, learning about his mother. His mother was a sharecropper, learning how the close community was during that time, learning about going to segregated schools and experiencing racism. And for me, that I like I said, I didn't know that before. And it was a really eye-opening experience. And we also got a chance to go to Whitney Plantation and Evergreen Plantation, which is in Battery, Louisiana, like along the Mississippi River. And so with Whitney Plantation and Evergreen Plantation, it's becoming, those plantations are becoming a part of the movement to tell stories of the enslaved, which, you know, from going on plantation tours, you see like the antebellum, the rich history of of the culture of, the plantation homes, the fields. And so this was different, going to these plantations to learn about the experience of the enslaved. And while there, we were able to interview a couple people. As you see in the photos, we were interviewing a nice woman and a man. They also grew up on Evergreen Plantation. They were both sharecroppers. They talked about the experience of hardships as sharecroppers. And one interview with the woman in the picture, black and white, I remember her saying that, even though they were Catholic, one of the things she remembered most was going to church. And she said that it was strange to her to go to church because the Black people had to sit at the top and while white people had to sit at the bottom. And she was like, how can this be a Catholic church and they could be racist like that? And she said she never understood that. And that was the only problem that she had with that. But just like Mr. Bibbins, she talked about the close family community that she had. Like growing up in a large family, even though they were poor, they had family. And that was the most important experience that they had. And I just love listening to the stories. And even though most of the interviewers were kind of hesitant to talk to us, but we told them that you are a part of history. This is your story. We don't know much about sharecropping and tenant farming at all.
Right.
So to be able to witness this, after the Civil War, during the Reconstruction era, and during the early 20th century, this was a big deal, because I learned that Louisiana really had sharecropping and tenant farming up until the 1970s.
Yeah.
You know, and yeah, it really didn't end like just a couple of years ago. And so also another part of my project was, like I said, interviewing people, and I had to do video editing, which I didn't know nothing about.
You had to learn real quick, huh?
I had to learn real quick, like start and go. So I did edit a couple of videos. I'm still in the process of editing them, and so hopefully they'll be up on NCPT's YouTube page.
Amazing,
Yeah.
amazing.
And also one more thing, like Jason is looking for people. So if any of you know somebody who has experience as a sharecropper, tenant farmer, or know people who know people, please let him know. I can reach out to him. He's also looking for more people.
Oh, congratulations, Ariel. That sounds like I can hear the emotion and the way that you were able to really embed yourself into this. And I love that you're coming away with having learned so much, having made it personal, right? Like just hearing people's stories and it got personal, right? They're like, what? It got personal. That's the way it should be, because this is our history too. Every little bit of this is a part of us. There's a piece of this that made you who you are today. So I'm so glad that you're able to have that experience. Does anybody have a question for her? If not, we will keep moving. Congratulations on a great job and a great poster. Thanks, Ariel.
Thank you.
And good luck in the fall, girl.
Thank you.
Let's see, we have up next. Oh, I think that's all I had. Was it just Ariel? Hannah, were you presenting in this group? Hannah, are you with? Oh no, Hannah, you're not. You are not presenting. I think that's it. Well, we did good. Am I right, Andre? Am I missing somebody?
Yes, ma'am, you're right. Group G only had 3.
Only had 3. Okay. Does anybody have any other questions for Ariel, Mykel, or Autumn, or Micheala?
I have a question for Ariel.
Go ahead, Andre.
Okay, Ariel, what was the number one thing that you enjoyed the most about your internship and doing this presentation? Because I really wanted to come and visit you. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to, but like I said, over the phone and plenty of times, you are just a wonderful intern, and I really appreciate your work ethic. So I just wanted to ask you a question, like, what was the number one thing you enjoyed over the course of your internship?
Mostly it was the peace and quiet. I was able to work all the, like, independently. You know, I come from a big family, so in that case, it's just 5 hours outside New Orleans. So to be able to be by myself, to work without any noise or distraction, it was just a blessing. So yeah, I was able to do all my work on time.
On time. That makes a difference, doesn't it? And I was gonna say that, you know, the other thing that I think that was so interesting, it is really peaceful. You know, the land and the connection to the area out there is really amazing, and it makes me to think that, you know, this land or these plantations that we were forced to work on, and then had this sharecropping experience on, that we were so connected to, that they would try to keep us from it, or even try to say that we as a people don't really like it. It's just kind of insulting, you know, like this is what we did, you know, we made this land what it is. So it's very interesting to me, the perspective that they have on African Americans and us in the land and what we embrace today. And I'd love to see more of us get more exposure back to it. Like, you know, it has such a connotation to it, you know, because of slavery, but I think just the benefits of knowing the land and understanding it and appreciating it, we need to get that back. Like, let's take that back. Let's reclaim that as ours. You took it from us, tried to keep it from us, tried to give it a negative connotation. I want us to take it back, because ownership of land and harvesting the land and being a part of that connection to the land is so important, and we shouldn't lose it because somebody took it from us, right? I have one question for Mykel too about the gardens. You said that there were still some, I think you said it was grapevines that were still in existence today. Do they still harvest anything from the gardens, or is it just all aesthetics that's there? And Autumn, you can answer too if you know.
I don't know what he's doing, but we do know originally the garden did not look what it looked like today. There was a lot of changes that happened with the garden. It was a vineyard. I'm not confident if it was the original vineyard from back in the 1700s, but we do know there were a lot of changes in the garden. Originally, oh, he said it was. Okay, so
Okay.
so originally the whole garden, how it was set up, it was like a bunch. First, it was a lot of like flowers imported from Paris, but of course, eventually flowers eventually die out, so they had to keep being replaced. There's a fountain now in the middle of the garden. Originally, it was just, I believe, an apple tree and a branch, until more people had started, a lot of more people started to come on and just kind of reconstruct everything. But yeah, it was pretty cool learning more, because I wish, oh God, I'm thinking about her, my coworker Caitlin. I wish she was here, because she's our garden person. She did a whole document talking about the garden, how it was like how they planted things, how much dirt that you need to dig out. It was just a lot, but it was very interesting. I do have pictures. I don't know why I didn't put them on my poster.
So I'm a garden fanatic. I was a horticulturalist. I studied horticulture and agriculture in school at TSU. So I want to see the pictures, even if you just send them to me. I think everybody should see them. But if you just send them to me, I want to see them. Please and thank you. And then I saw Mykel did have a question for you, Ariel. It was asking about the slave cabins and how you felt.
It was 50-50, because like I remember going to Whitney Plantation and seeing the chopped heads, like, they have the chopped heads of the slaves who were killed after the 1811 uprising. Mm-hmm. And so going to plantations is kind of a double-edged sword to me. Mm-hmm. At one point it's sad, but at the same time it's necessary. So going in the slave cabin, photographing slave cabins, it's both good and bad, Yeah. So I have different feelings about it, but nonetheless, I'm grateful to be a part of that history, to research that.
I did a plantation tour in South Carolina once, and it was heavy. You could just feel the heavy in the land of what took place there. And they still had shacks, and they had it was like a whole outcropping of the shacks together. And at first it just felt, I'm not a claustrophobic type person, but just seeing them together, I could not imagine living in that space with 20 other people. Like that was in that space with 20 other people is what they explained to us. And I just, it was just heavy. It was heavy, and I felt oppressed just being right there at that moment. But I agree, Ariel, that it was like, no, I need to see this. I need to know this. I need to, in order to really appreciate and understand the level of what people went through, our mindset, how we grew from that as a people, as a culture, how we came out of that and what we accomplished today. It just makes me so much more proud of the actions that happened out of it. And I just don't take it for granted that someone, and I think, who was it saying? It might have been Mr. Stanton, who was like, somebody prayed for me. And that's like, I think, our ancestors prayed that one day there would be a person like Ariel, Autumn, Micheala, Mykel, Andre, Chris, Hannah, Angelica. There would be a person who would have freedom, who would not have to do this, who would not feel this way, that what their sacrifice is doing is to make someone else better. And it's so poignant. And I feel you, Ariel, in the sense that, it was a double-edged sword.
Yeah, and it was really good because it did inspire me for, like, this might be my potential thesis paper for my master's. So
really,
so really good. Yeah.
Ugh, crazy. Awesome. 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 Well, I think that we're at time. Actually, wait, let me check because Andre,
They gave
it's a
a,
bunch.
like Ebony said, as long as we're done by 11:09.
11:09. So we do
We
have
are,
some more time. Okay, good. I
but
know we started late with the presentation, so I felt like, man, we are rushing these kids. They are giving
yes, ma'am.
100%. So, I had another question for actually I'll give Mykel's question. He was saying what resonated the most as African American women for you for your experiences. And I think that question is really it's a lot for Micheala. I want to hear your answer, but Autumn too, because you guys had the chance to read about a love story, like like a. How did that make you feel? Did you have a Bridgerton moment? Did you have? I mean, like did you just? How did you feel?
Well, I actually ended up DMing him like a whole answer. But so I get it was just so much because even though it just seems like had a happy ending, schools were desegregated and everything, it still bothers me that I can't speak for everybody, but just seeing the reactions from people and them bringing their kids and kind of showing them, it's like, well, why do we scratch the surface of the surface and just kind of insert maybe a paragraph in like the history books when like in reality it wouldn't be. In some schools are still de facto segregated, depending on zoning and the environment and of this and 1%
De facto unequal too, if you want to be real about it, right? Yeah.
It's just, I don't know, it bothered me, but it did warm my heart to see the fact that even though we see so much racism being revealed and exposed, seeing those younger parents or even older parents who bring their kids and grandkids and they're just so into the park, or they make them do these things called junior ranger books, and it makes them answer questions just to make sure that they're paying attention and really like understanding the importance, especially the Caucasian parents, because they come in and like their goal is basically to teach their kids the right way. So even when we see like racism on social media or just like on the news, and it's like, oh, here goes the legacy continuing, you still have like those that are actually trying to do something better and trying to change the narrative. And it was nice to see in person, instead of just kind of seeing things online, but like just seeing that in person and seeing it actually work out in real time was really necessary for me.
Yeah, it's so true. I think I have two small kids. They're in elementary school, and I often think about it's a double-edged sword again, because it's kind of like you said. I do feel like we wanted the option. Like I want the option that if I want my child to go to a certain school, they're not excluded because of the color of who they are or whatever. But I also feel that the nurturing that they get from people who look like them, act like them, understand their history is different. And it's important for them to have both. It's important for you to have exposure to both. The world is not just one way. They are going to need both experiences to be successful in this world. So to have not had the decision come through where they didn't have the option and access to both would have been even more detrimental, right? Even more of a trajectory that would have put us apart. And it had to happen. It had to happen. So I appreciate that sentiment, Micheala. I really do. Autumn, you had an answer too.
I did actually, especially with Pelagie's story. Once she was a slave, so it was like her main objective once she got older and she got freed was, she was basically saying, "I'm going through all of this for you guys, just so you guys don't have to go through what I went through." That's basically the whole story of Miss Pelagie, and she kind of empowers me. It kind of gives me an idea of what I would like to be as a Black woman, and also what my mom has gone through to make sure that I have the life that I have with today. Um, it was interesting. It made me feel more. It made me feel more empowered, more than just feel all lovey day, like, oh, they're in love. It was so nice, but it was like it kind of gave me a few stepping stones. Like, okay, so if this woman can go through so much. She lost 3 court cases after she was insulted by many people. I think one of them was white and 2 of them were Black, and basically they were telling her, "Don't snitch." Or don't run your mouth. And of course, she went to the court and tried to get everything situated, even though she lost all 3 of them. But it was like, Miss Pelagie at a young age, she knew that she was going to be freed, even though she was born into slavery by what family was it? The Bouvet family. She already knew that she was going to be free. She knew she was going to have this life forever. And it's like she took those extra steps to make sure, not only for her freedom, but just to make sure that her kids were okay. Because I actually got a chance. Me and Mykel got a chance to meet with one of the descendants for the Amaral family.
Okay.
Was just talking to us about Pelagie and what she was as a woman. And she was like, he was basically saying, we know that she was scared. We know that she was having all this fear. And it's just like this trauma for everything that's happened to her.
Mm.
But at the same time, it was like she did this for her family. She was more of a family person. She was like, I just want to make sure you guys never, ever have to go through what I've been through. She really got her reputation through her kids, because her kids had more of a better reputation. She did it off of love, because her Benjamin was very much in love. They basically, at first they weren't living together because of the rules and how illegal interracial marriage was. But then later on, we're not sure if they went to Illinois and got married, or they decided to just live separately till later on they were able to live together. But it was as if a Black woman choosing who she was going to marry was like, it was foreign. It was like, first it was because I read a lot of stories about this, so I read a lot of stories about this where it was like, it was more the masters basically chose who the women get to marry at a very young age. And it was like Pelagie, she was like, I'm not about to deal with that. I'm going to choose who I love at the end of the day. And I was like, it was foreign for actually a Black woman at all to be the head of household, because normally it's either a Black man or a white man. So it was like it felt as though that she didn't need to have all of that. And it was like, wow, like she basically, it was interesting to me, especially since the head of household was a woman, and not only just a woman, a Black woman at that. So I was, but again, even though I love their love story, I was just more interested in Pelagie's. Unfortunately, I was more interested in hers, because it was like she was the embodiment of a strong Black woman. And so she had later died in 1890, which was really cool.
It's amazing. The strength of a Black woman is amazing. And to it's kind of like you said, that she was able to have her choice, right? Here we go. I had my choice. I had to live in that choice and accept all that was a part of it. But I didn't lose my fighting spirit. I'm going to speak out every time I felt like I was wrong. I'm going to raise my children so that they don't have to go through this. So it's just, I hope you take all of that with you. They're kicking us out. Please click your link to head back to the main room. Congratulations to all of you. Great job.